It's been 6 months since I first ventured into the world of mechanical keyboards and bought the Keychron V1 Max. So, now that the honeymoon period is over and we're back in the real world, do I still think the V1 Max is a great deal? Well, sorta. Let's talk about it. The V1 Max from Keychron is a 75% mechanical keyboard, the 75% representing its size in comparison to a full-size keyboard, with this being roughly 3/4 of that size by way of omitting the numpad and a few other buttons, and the mechanical representing the fact that it has that chunky typing sound and feel that make nerds do the Robert De Niro head nod thing. It also has a bunch of other features that help it secure the keyboard nerd seal of approval, such as a gasket mount design, hot swappable keys, and PBT keycaps. And if you don't know what any of those things mean, then good news, this keyboard might just be for you. You see, the V1 Max is definitely angled to be kind of an entryway into the world of fully fledged mechanical keyboards. A sort of marijuana of the tech world for you 80s kids out there.
Just say no.
And this is also reflected in the price. When I bought it, it had an MSRP of just $94, although that has since crept up to $104, so thank you President Trump and or Biden, depending on your political leanings.
Let's not go there.
So, these are all great facts, but what's it like to actually live with this thing? Well, in this video, I'll be going over the design, the build quality, how it sounds, because I know you guys wouldn't have clicked on a keyboard review if you weren't fiends for those ASMR shots of someone typing, the battery life, and finally connectivity before giving you an overall conclusion. There are timestamps if you want to skip ahead. But before we get into it, if you like tech stuff such as videos about desk setup accessories or reviews that aren't one long ad for a shitty product, then give this video a like and subscribe to see more content like this. And without further ado, so the V1 Max is, in my opinion, a pretty nice looking keyboard overall. It has a rather distinct look to it with a very solid metal-ish frame, which is not actually metal but an ABS plastic housing. And the default keycaps it comes with have these rounded little corners and are all slightly angled and or raised so that they're all clearly visible. Now, by default, Keychron sells the V1 Max in a colorway they call Carbon Black, which looks like this, and is the only version they sell on their website. Meanwhile, my V1 Max, which I bought from a local retailer, happens to look like this, with the white and dark blue keycaps plus the light blue accent, which I think looks really dope and honestly fits my setup so much better than the default version would have, so I guess I just lucked out. Now, it's worth mentioning that Keychron does sell a bunch of extra keycaps on their site with a ton of variety to them, some of which look really cool, meaning you can customize your keyboard to look pretty much exactly how you want to. Except, in spite of having literally hundreds of options on their site, they don't have this particular one that I have. They do have a bunch of pictures of it when you look at their palm rests, but that's about as close as you'll get to being able to buy this thing, apparently. Speaking of palm rests, I also bought the silicone palm rest alongside the keyboard, and while this isn't a review of the palm rest, I will say that it's at least decent enough and hasn't caused me any issues at all, which is great because, at least in my opinion, you absolutely need to use a palm rest with this keyboard. Okay, so obviously everyone's different, so your mileage may vary, but I really do think this keyboard is just a bit too high to use it without a palm rest. And lastly, it is worth mentioning again that it is a 75% layout, meaning you are missing the numpad as well as a few other keys. I listed this as a downside for me when I initially got the keyboard, given how I was used to having a full-size layout after using one for all of my not-so-short life. But hey, that was months ago. Surely 6 months would be enough time to get used to, you know where I'm going with this. No, I'm still not fully used to it, and I still find myself missing the extra keys when I'm using this thing. Of course, that's not an issue with the keyboard itself, but rather one of knowing what you want. Keychron does sell a full-size keyboard which looks identical to this one, the V6 Max, at only a few dollars more, so if you're the type of person who prefers to have all of the keys on your keyboard, you should get that one instead. On the flip side, there's also the V4 Max, which is a 60% layout and therefore perfect for those of you who also prefer to pour milk in the bowl before the cereal. You maniac! When it comes to the build quality, I have to say I'm really impressed with the V1 Max. Given the price range it's in, you might have expected Keychron to take some shortcuts when making this thing. And sure, the frame is made of ABS plastic rather than metal, but it still feels surprisingly solid and sturdy. The whole thing weighs in at around 770 grams, or roughly 1.7 pounds, which is enough for it not to slide around the desk when using it, but not enough that you would want to use it as a murder weapon. That's how everyone rates their tech, right? Now, while the frame itself is made of ABS plastic, the keycaps are made of PBT, which my very extensive research shows is actually better in terms of overall durability. And I will say, after 6 months, these keys show absolutely no sign of wear and tear, no scratches, no discoloration, faded letters, or anything like that. The only complaint I have is that one of the keys has started to show a bit of a tendency to double press whenever I hit it, meaning the U key will sometimes, not always, but maybe like 5 to 10% of the time, write 2 U's instead of 1. It's only ever happened with that particular key, and honestly, there's probably an easy way to fix it, but it still hasn't presented enough of an annoyance that I felt compelled to try to figure out how to make it go away, but it is worth noting. Anyway, aside from that one little caveat, I do think the build quality of the V1 Max is exceptionally well for its price range. Next, let's take a look, or rather a listen, to how this keyboard actually sounds. So the V1 Max has a 4000 milliamp hour battery inside it, which can give you up to 225 hours of wireless working time, and those numbers sound pretty impressive. However, it's worth pointing out that those aforementioned 225 hours are only if you turn the backlights off. If not, then you only get up to 100 hours of wireless working time. And that's if you turn the lights all the way down to the lowest setting. In actuality, you probably get a decent bit less than that, and from my own personal experience, I can say that I do feel like it has to be recharged relatively often. Of course, being that it's a keyboard and you'll most likely be using it at your desk most of the time, it's not that hard to find a spare USB-C cable to charge it with. Oh, and a bonus tip is that if you press the function key and B at the same time, the RGBs underneath the keys light up to show you how much battery is left, which is a cool little feature. And finally, it's time to talk about connectivity. So the V1 Max is a wireless keyboard with several options for how to connect it to a device. First off, it has Bluetooth 5.1, with which you can seamlessly connect it to pretty much anything. Then it also supports a 2.4 GHz connection, which is enabled through not one, but 2 dongles that come included with the keyboard, both a USB-A and a USB-C version. And given that it also comes with a USB-C cable, as well as both a USB-A to USB-C adapter and a USB-C to USB-A adapter, there is no shortage to the amount of ways in which you could hook this bad boy up to whichever device you want. On top of that, the connection seems super stable, and I haven't experienced any issues with it at all over the past 6 months. And, as if all that wasn't enough, it not only supports both Windows and Mac natively, but it even has a toggle on the back so you can switch between the 2 different keyboard layouts. And it also comes with a bunch of extra keycaps, both with Mac and Windows symbols on them, meaning you can replace the keys to fit the platform you're using, which is done with a keycap and switch puller, which is also included in the box. I mean, god damn! At this point, Keychron is just shitting all over Apple and their brave decision to save the environment by making you spend extra money to buy everything you need in separate packages. So yeah, in terms of connectivity, Keychron has done an absolutely phenomenal job with the V1 Max, and I, for one, commend them for going above and beyond where other companies don't even go up to where they should go. Overall, I think it's pretty obvious that I'm still a very big fan of this keyboard. When I first got it, I absolutely fell in love with it, as it was my first foray into the world of mechanical keyboards, and even all this time later, I still find myself every bit as happy with it as I was that first day. Now, it's not all sunshine and puppies here. I definitely do wish I'd gone with something full-sized, and the battery life does seem a little short at times. But other than that, I really am hard-pressed to come up with anything negative to say about this keyboard. The typing experience is great, the comfort is good, although it is just a little tall perhaps, and it looks just as good as the day I bought it. Can it compete with the higher priced mechanical keyboards out there? Well, honestly, I don't know, but I don't think it's meant to. I think this keyboard, with the price and the comparatively high level of quality you get for that money, is meant precisely for someone like me. Someone who might be interested in mechanical keyboards but isn't an expert who owns a massive collection of them. So, if that description fits you, then I definitely think that the Keychron V1 Max is worth it. That's it for this video. Do consider giving it a like and subscribing, as it really does help out the channel. And if you have any questions, then don't hesitate to let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.